just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
We're back with another episode of the NFL Draft Prospects Podcast. Joe DeLeone, Ryan Roberts, talking about the 2023 NFL Draft. We're going to be diving into the 5 players that have accepted invites to the Senior Bowl, some names that have also been invited to the Shrine Game, some surprises that were not in the grouping of Senior Bowl players, but decided to go to the Shrine Game in particular. All that on today's show. Before we get to that, though, folks, I just want to tell you about BetOnline. Football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all of your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as you continue to source for all sports wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports and events like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts. Ryan, it's finally that time of year again where we're seeing names invited to the Senior Bowl. There are progressively going to be bigger and bigger names, and the crop of 5 guys are talented players. Not the biggest names, but still 5 very talented players. And I want to start off with the low-hanging fruit here. As a FCS guy, there were 2 North Dakota State players that accepted invites to attend the Senior Bowl. That being Cody Mauch, who's the offensive lineman, and then Hunter Luepke, the fullback. Now, both these guys, very talented. And I just got to say, separate side note, excited that there's a fullback that was added to the list and one that was added this early.
Is it Mauch or Mauch? I've actually been wondering that. You're probably right.
Mauch.
I don't know. I
think it's Mauch.
Okay.
I'll probably be corrected at some point.
So backstory on Mauch, though, or Mauch, however it's pronounced. He's taken that trend that a lot of FCS offensive linemen had taken, Joe, over the years. He was a high school tight end. And if you go look at his bio, he was like a 6'4", 235-pound tight end as a freshman. It just kept getting bigger and bigger. He's an interesting player because he's not the longest guy in the world. I think he's got 32 and some odd inch arms, but he's a really, really nice athlete. So I think there's going to be an internal debate whether can he stick a tackle? Is he an interior player long-term? Regardless, he's got really nice baseline athleticism for offensive line, and he plays with a big mean streak, man, which you shouldn't be surprised watching North Dakota State play, right? Like they're trying to run it down your throat basically every play on offense, and that's kind of how he has been bred to play the game. So impact blocker in the sense that he's a physical player, but he's got baseline athleticism that's very interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a center long-term because I think that he has this type of athleticism to work up to the second level, uncovered, not great length, but a really good athlete for the position. And then first fullback to the game, Joe. Pretty dope, man. It's pretty dope. Obviously, he plays more of a tailback role for North Dakota State as kind of that, guy that's going to get downhill and run the ball at a high volume. But at 6'1", 240-ish pounds, somewhere in that ballpark, Luepke has shown the ability to catch the football. He's run the football. He can block. He's kind of an all-around player. I can envision him in one of the Kyle Shanahan disciples, trying to get him as like a West Coast fullback. The guy can kind of do some things out of the backfield, run the football in a pinch, like that type of dude. So really nice to see the small schoolers get the invites. I remember 2 years ago was Dylan Radins and Spencer Brown got the first 2 invites. Now you get another. I think last year was Trevor Penning got the first invite. So continues the FCS guys getting the first invite for the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I always love it when the FCS guys do get that early invite. And you talked about Mauch's background. I think it's really easy to say, FCS lineman, North Dakota State offensive lineman is just going to be some big, hulking, stiff mass. Like he's not going to be able to move. But as everyone does know about these North Dakota State offensive linemen, they're typically really good athletes. And his background as a tight end, and anyone who wants to go find the really funny picture of Mauch when he was a recruit, he was tiny compared to what he is now. Like he was like 215, 220 pounds, and now he's massive. And that athleticism really shows up on tape. And there's a reason why he has always been considered to be an all-American type offensive lineman at the FCS level. He's like a total lock to have gotten this invite for me. Like for an FCS guy, there's not that many huge names this cycle. So for him to be thrown in there makes a lot of sense. But heck, I don't think this is too crazy to say, but I think that in some instances, Luepke might be able to be utilized as an actual halfback, like as an actual running back. And I know it's a little bit aggressive to project the fullback to do that stuff, but I just in general, not a lot of offenses use fullbacks that often. And the only reason why I'm saying that he can do that is he is one of the few college fullbacks in the country that get as much usage as he does. Again, those receptions out of the backfield, the handoffs that he gets, the abilities that he's taken over multiple games in the playoffs when they've needed him to. I don't think it's a stretch. Not saying he's going to get drafted early, but he has the capability to get some touches, potentially maybe at the next level.
Well, and Mauch, kind of circling back to him real quick, Joe, the best thing that teams do now is, when you're on their roster and you're on their bio, and now you can hit the historical tab on the bios and it shows how they've progressed through the years. Cody Mauch is hilarious, man. He went from a ginger freshman with short hair to he is now a Viking as a senior, man. Like he's got the gap in his tooth and he just looks like a bad dude, man. Like I would not mess with him. So that one's cool. But to your point about Luepke, if that does happen, Joe, if that trajectory does happen, who he's going to be compared to, right? Like Peyton Hillis. That's who he's going to be compared to, man.
I've said that before. He's got a little Peyton Hillis in him, and if there's a way for him to be utilized that way, I think he's got it in him. Like I think he has it in him, not to rush for 1,000 yards, but
so he's going to be on the cover of Madden one time and then fall
exactly.
off the earth.
But my main point is that he could turn into a really nice change of pace running back. I just don't think there's a lot of running backs in the NFL that warrant getting carries, and he's one of those few guys as a potential rookie that could, that be that spell type of guy, that short yardage type of a guy.
Well, I think at worst, he's a guy that presents a lot of versatility to a backfield, which is going to be obviously a big selling point, right? Like he can catch the football, he can block. We said he can run a little bit in, certain situations, and he's probably going to be a premier special teamer. Like I can imagine him being a coverage unit guy at 237, 240 pounds. So he's got a sticking point to him, which is always nice to see when you play a position that not every team tends to value.
Now, the other two guys that we had invited that I don't have, I think, as much info on, and I want to talk about Dorian Williams in a second, but Cameron Young from Mississippi State accepted his invite, defensive lineman, and then Nick Saldiveri, offensive lineman from Old Dominion. You've brought them both up to me, but as we know, I don't think anyone on this planet watches as much film as you do. So I know that you've got tidbits on both these guys.
Yeah, Saldiveri is an interesting one. I wasn't expecting him to get an invite, to be honest. I watched him a little bit over the summer because I was watching Old Dominion's tight end, Zach Kuntz, who's a former Penn State transfer. Saldiveri is definitely an interesting football player. I do think that Jim Nagy kind of hit it down with the invite where he kind of said, this is a college offensive tackle who's probably a center at the next level because he's a pretty solid athlete, just kind of positionally. Again, kind of like what I was saying with Mauch, he lacks a little bit of that length to maybe last outside full time, but a player that as a center from an athleticism standpoint, an interesting player. And then the other one, Cameron Young, the defensive tackle, nose tackle from Mississippi State. Joe, this kid, I'm about to relook this up real quick because he has some of the craziest length, if I remember correctly. He was on the NFS report this year, which for people that don't know, that is the system that you have for guys that are entering the NFL the next year. So Cameron Young at 6'3" and a half, 316 pounds, good size. He has 35 and 1/8 inch arms, Joe. He's got plus 35 inch arms playing that nose tackle position for Mississippi State. So my guy is long, super long, and he's a powerful kid, right? Like he's going to get extension in the run game. Is he a twitchy player? No. Is he going to give you off you much as a pass rusher at the next level? No. But as a guy that can present some early down opportunities as a run stopper, that's kind of what Cameron Young presents to a football team. So he's an interesting player. I'm very curious to see Saldiveri, though, at the Senior Bowl because I'm interested to see just what positions they line him up as. Like I said, Jim already hinted something about him playing center. Is he going to see some reps at guard? Is he going to still get some reps at tackle to see if the athleticism is enough to overcompensate for the length? I think there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of interesting, just kind of intrigue for me to kind of see how positionally he lines up at the Senior Bowl.
And that's always like so important for these smaller program guys, the group of 5, the high end FCS guys, to get placed in these one-on-one drills. And we talk about it all the time on the show. That has to be the biggest opportunity for any position group to rise, because you usually have a good sense of what certain guys can do. But in these one-on-one situations, throwing in offensive linemen who on a week-to-week basis are not getting premier pass rush talent going up against them, but on top of that, being placed at different positions where they're likely projected at the next level is really beneficial for their draft stocks. I think of one guy in particular off the top of my head that fits that perfectly, which is Cole Strange. The guy went in the first round after the performance that he had at the Senior Bowl. Before that, he was a relative unknown. He was someone that people were saying maybe a day 3. I think we were both willing to say maybe this is a late day 2 kid, the way that he looked, the way that he matched up playing at center and guard. He's got those capabilities. And, as you're talking about with this Old Dominion kid, he might be one of those players, maybe if he punches inside and has a really good week.
Joe, it is so crazy, man, because, you said it perfectly, right? Positional flexibility and the ability to play multiple positions makes offensive linemen more and more valuable. It is crazy to be recording right now, though, because recording here on a Thursday afternoon, and these Senior Bowl lists are now starting to roll in, Joe. I'm kind of keeping tabs on the Twitter right now, and I think we have 3 guys that just accepted invites within the last hour.
Are you serious?
I'm serious, man. You want to roll through them real quick? We can roll through them real quick.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure I post this immediately. So who else was invited?
Tyson Badgett, the quarterback out of Shepherd, Division II kid. Okay. Funny, he was technically a senior last year, went back for his 5th year this year. I tried to get him to come to the College Gridiron Showcase last year, but he obviously didn't come out. And
that really benefited him.
Yes, it sure did. And I can guarantee he will not be down in Dallas-Fort Worth this year for the College Gridiron Showcase. So he's a bigger kid. I think they had him at like 6'3" and some change, 215 pounds, 9+ inch hands. So he kind of fits the profile. And Joe, he just set the all-time record for touchdown passes in Division II history. I think he just threw his 151st career touchdown. So he's just ridiculous numbers during his career at Shepherd. So he's a player that just got invited. My alma mater, Joe, actually. I only spent a year there. But Frostburg State got an invite.
Stop.
Offensive lineman out of Frostburg State, Gottlieb Aidzi, who is a left tackle out of Frostburg State. He was also on the NFS list, if I remember correctly. Going to look up Frostburg State real quick here. So, yeah, he was on there, and he is 6'4", even, 308 pounds with 33-inch arms, has an over an 80-inch wingspan. He had a near draftable grade in the spring. So interesting player out of Frostburg State. First time I've ever heard of a Frostburg State player getting invited, which is pretty wild.
Did you have any idea? Like, was that somebody that at all was on your, there's always that one guy that it's like, okay.
he was in like a bunch of like, so like there's a few intriguing small schoolers this year, like the Mike Edwards kid from Campbell that I know you saw kind of live and in person. There was Quentin Barrow, who's a Division II player. I think he's out of Grand Valley State. Like there's some small school offensive linemen. He's kind of in that group, but apparently the Senior Bowl likes him. I haven't seen the film on him, obviously, but Jim says he has, really good feet and, kind of upside to develop. So he's the second one. And then the last guy that just got invited was a Louisville defensive end named Yaya Diaby, who is verified at 6'3" and 7/8", 270 pounds, and he has 33+ inch arms. So he has an 80-inch wingspan as well. He's more of your 5-tech, kind of big end type that has a lot of physicality to him. Plays with hair on fire. He's not a true outside rusher type, right? Like he's more of a speed to power converter, but has some strength, has some pop in his hands. So an interesting edge setter, kind of hustle player as a pass rusher as well. So a couple of interesting players that just got their invites.
Yeah, and I'm sure by the time I post this, which I'm going to try to post it immediately, there's going to be like 15 more guys that are invited. No, but like in all seriousness, this is something that just kind of gradually rolls in, and I think we're going to try to update them progressively over time, just every so often with, who's getting invited. But those guys are all talented. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, Joe, the coolest thing that the Senior Bowl does, aside from giving these kids opportunities, is I do love the stuff that Jim Nagy does with traveling to the schools and presenting the invites in person, especially the small school kids, man. Like, it means a lot. It is really cool.
I remember when he usually does it with the small school kids. And I remember when Adam Troutman was invited, and I actually interviewed Adam Troutman on the FCS show a couple weeks after that. And hearing his perspective on it was really freaking cool. Like, hearing him say, like, yeah, I wasn't expecting it. Like, I knew I was going to the Shrine game at the very least. There were possible murmurs of it. And then, our coach calls us down at the end of practice, and I was completely stunned, but I was excited. Like, that's like the gist of it. And it is really cool for these guys that when they showed up at their school, when they were freshmen, probably wouldn't, if you told them that they were going to be playing in the Senior Bowl, they probably would have called you crazy. And it's great to see that these opportunities pop up.
Without a doubt. It's the best part, man, is to see, especially the small school kids, which is why I love that Jim always starts with, some FCS offensive lineman or whatever it is to kind of get everything kicked off the last three. I mean, literally, it's been an FCS offensive lineman from the Missouri Valley the last 3 years. And it's just awesome to see those type of reactions with his teammates and his coaches. And because for most of these guys, the smaller school kids, like we just mentioned, Cody Mauch was a 230-pound tight end as a freshman. I mean, we had Spencer Brown on the show. He was a 210-pound freshman, and eventually he's a 320-pound offensive tackle going to the Senior Bowls. Like, these kids are usually players that have worked very hard, have had major transformations, and have had really to grind for everything they have. So that's just the cool part of this process.
I want to hit on Dorian Williams, and then I want to talk about some Shrine game stuff really quickly to wrap us. But
you're missing another Senior Bowler, by the way.
Someone else was just invited?
I think he was invited yesterday, but it kind of fell through the cracks a little bit, Joe. So
while you go ahead.
Yes. No. Go with Dorian Williams, then we'll circle back.
So while you're looking him up, for those that don't remember or didn't tune into our rankings that we had at the beginning of the season for linebackers, I put Dorian Williams as my number 5 linebacker, and I think he fits perfectly as an early Senior Bowl invite. Tulane's been playing really great this year. He's not the primary reason for their success, but I think that he's the best player on their defense. And their defense, like, they've got one of the best, I think, run defenses in the country. I forget, I had the stat pulled up yesterday, but statistically, they have one of the best defenses in a number of categories against a lot of their opponents and quality opponents. Like, Kansas State is one of their wins. Dorian Williams is just that guy, that clean tackler, really good instincts, not big, not super twitchy, not going to be like a 4-4 guy, but he's just super clean. Across the board, not a lot of issues with his technique. Again, the tackling to me is what I really wrote down on my notes on him that really impressed me. And like, heck, maybe this is like a late to mid day 2 player that plugs in somebody's defense and has like 100 tackles. And you're like, who the hell is this Dorian Williams kid?
Yeah, he's a really fun player. He's like an Energizer bunny on the defense. I mean, he started early in his career a couple years ago. He was playing more kind of in space as like that displaced Sam kind of overhang defender. And he's gradually kind of morphed himself into like more of a true inside linebacker. Still not perfect in that spot because he's just a little bit of a lighter player, but he will run down and he will kill you in the run game, man. Like, he's got a lot of pop in his pads, which tells me special teams upside early on. And he's got some versatility as far as he's played in coverage, he's played in space, he's played stack. He's done a lot of things. So he's just, for me, Dorian Williams is a player that you were just like, oh, he just made a roster for the 5th straight year, And while he might never be a starting player, maybe he'll just be a core team, special team, or in a key reserve. Like, that's
you're not as high on him as I am.
I mean, look, he's got good eyes and he's a physical player. So could he latch on as a part-time starter for a team? It could happen. I don't know if I see full-time starter the next level. I see more key reserve special teamer than like a substantial volume player, but we'll see. We'll see how it works out.
Who is the guy that I missed?
So Princeton wide receiver, Joe.
Oh, so I could have sworn he was invited. I could have sworn he was, and I was like, why isn't his name up there anywhere? So continue. I didn't mean to cut you off.
So Andrei, Andrei Iosivas, 6'2", 7/8", so 6'3", 201 pounds, 32 1/8-inch arms, 77-inch wingspan, wide receiver out of Princeton, Joe, who is originally apparently from Hawaii. From Honolulu, Hawaii. So interesting player. And when you look into just kind of his general background, he's a track kid. So he runs track for Princeton. He has a notable track background as a sprinter. And apparently he is a kid that is rumored that could potentially run in the high 4.2s, like 4.28,
Wow.
4.3 flat. Like he's that type of kid. I've seen some clips from some of my scouting buddies. So he doesn't get on top of guys as well as you would expect for a guy that supposedly runs that fast, but he's got good length. He's got good hands, and he wins in the air surprisingly well. But I'm told that he is going to blow things up. I'm pretty sure he was on Feldman's freak list as well, but supposedly high 4.2 athlete and like a 40-inch vert kid. Like he's going to test out of the gym, apparently.
He has consistently been working up his draft stock since the first game that Princeton played. They have been using him a ton, and his production and his quality of play has just gotten better and better every single week. I was talking to a former Princeton player who played with him and just said that the guy is fantastic. Like he is a great athlete, great kid. So for him to get this opportunity is huge. And he might be one of those guys who, to the nerds like us, we know about him. We know about Andrei, but for the average fan that's going to tune into the Senior Bowl and the Senior Bowl coverage the week before and during it, and going to be like, where did this kid come from? Like he could be one of those guys, like a Christian Watson type week, not to get drafted that high, but to have like a huge week where everyone's buzzing and talking about him, because I'm sure he's going to burn a couple of dudes and he's going to have some crazy plays.
So I'm just looking up his track and field numbers, Joe. He was first team All-American in 2022 as a heptathlon. So that's like the combination of a bunch of different events. He ran a 6.7 in the 60-meter, ran 15.3 in the pole vault. He has 154 and 154 feet 9-inch javelin throw, 45 and 2.5 in the shot put. He has done the long jump, a very good number there. He's high jumped. He's run the 60-meter hurdles, run the 100, has run the 400. He's done everything for his program in track and field. So this is just a all-around impressive athlete that I think is still learning how to be a really good football player, but obviously the athletic traits are there for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very, very talented kid. And another talented kid that it was surprising that he did not receive an invite. And ended up going to the Shrine Game, and maybe he does get one, is a player who we had ranked very highly in this year's receiver class. That is Zay Flowers from Boston College. Now, it seems as if the disastrous season for Boston College, as they've been terrible this year, might have impacted his projection because of his production has not been as good. Dracovic has not played as well. The offensive line has been really bad. That team overall has been really, really underwhelming. And he's going to the Shrine Game. And that's no knock on the Shrine Game. It's just unexpected because you would think a kid like that would be picking the Senior Bowl first.
And like you said, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he does end up at the Senior Bowl because, again, this is just early invites, right? Like he might get an invite to the Senior Bowl and just kind of pass on the Shrine Bowl invite and end up in Mobile rather than ending up in Vegas. So you never do know. Ultimately, though, if the Shrine Game's able to hold on to Zay Flowers, it's a great pickup for them, man. It is, because he's a tremendous football player. I think that the NFL may be somewhat lower on Flowers than maybe some of the media are, but I think that they're going to end up being wrong, if I'm being completely honest, man. This kid is a dynamic athlete who has continued to be productive amidst bad offensive line play, quarterback play that's been hurt and inconsistent throughout his career. So this is a dynamic player, has shown the ability to win on all three levels. Big gift for the Shrine, but ultimately I would not be surprised if he's in Mobile. I do think he's that good.
So very talented list of players so far. Again, we're going to continue to update as we get more guys coming in each week. We're going to talk about the names that are going to be playing at the next level, and hopefully we end up making that trip. Wow, I am getting blasted with emails. And then hopefully we make that trip to Mobile and we get to watch these guys in person. At Joe DeLeone, at Rise and Draft, thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back with more NFL draft coverage next week.